Today is Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. We're upstate New York now. We're right alongside CSX's Selkirk branch, the old Conrail Selkirk branch. This is the connection between Selkirk Yard, the big yard south of Albany for CSX, and the Chicago line, the water level route. This Selkirk branch joins up there at CP Hoffman's, not too far west of here. Right now we're just east of Rotterdam Junction. This is a old railroad right-of-way of the New York West Shore and Buffalo. That was Andrew Carnegie Railroad. It was owned by Andrew Carnegie, which competed with Cornelius Vanderbilt's New York Central Railroad. Of course, Cornelius didn't like the West Shore encroaching on him, so he started a war. He threatened to build a railroad in Pennsylvania alongside Carnegie's Pennsylvania Railroad to compete with him. And big war ensued, proxy fight ensued, and finally they came to a truce, and Vanderbilt obtained the West Shore right-of-way from Carnegie with the promise that he would not build the South Pennsylvania Railroad in Pennsylvania. So I think Vanderbilt got the better end of that deal. He acquired some real estate where Carnegie acquired nothing. It just eliminated competition between the two of them. Well, lines that are still in operation today that used to belong to the New York West Shore and Buffalo are this Selkirk branch, which runs from CPSK east of Selkirk Yard to Hoffman's, the river line up from New Jersey, and a bypass track around Rochester, New York. Those are the ones that I know of. Here at the lower Gregg Road grade crossing on the branch, you have this relay box, which provides its own hazards from maintenance away workers. And some sentimental individual left his calling card on this relay box, telling the world how he felt about the previous owner of the railroad here, Conrail. I agree. And we have a green signal at last on the south track. A westbound is coming. Westbound at 10:28 a.m. Wow, that was a monster. Train was loaded with double-stacked marine containers, steamship company containers. Undoubtedly those came out of the port of Newark. He's headed for either Syracuse or Chicago. He had a DPU helper in the middle, ES44AC, and a couple of GEVOs on the point. That westbound was Q159 en route from the port of Newark, New Jersey to Syracuse, where those cars will be blocked onto other trains. Further west, you're looking at the Route 5S crossing over the old Boston and Maine Rotterdam branch. We're in the town of Rotterdam, New York. This is where today's Pan Am Railways connects with CSX. Years ago it was the Boston and Maine Railroad. And there's even a Pan Am -8 sitting down there to the west. Right now we're further west at Cranesville on the south side of the Mohawk River. That hiking bicycle trail you see is the old New York and West Shore right-of-way, which once went to South Amsterdam. It was served until the 1990s, I believe. It served a couple of stone quarries. This line used to go all the way to Buffalo on the south side of the Mohawk River, pretty much. New York State Route 5S parallels the old West Shore right-of-way across the state. And we're here at Lock 10 in the town of Cranesville on the Mohawk River. Panning to the north, you can see on the opposite side of the river, the CSX Chicago line. Get some great unobstructed views of trains here. To the west is a power plant for Adirondack Power and Light. Many years ago they used to get coal delivered to them by the New York West Shore in Buffalo. In 37 we have a westbound approaching Lock 10. I can hear the unmistakable sound of GEVOs. Pretty generously powered auto rack train going west, going by the signals at CP 173. On the south side further, you can see the stone quarry works here, which was once served by the West Shore Railroad and later a Conrail branch. Comes 284 from Niagara Falls, New York to New York City. Got a heritage unit on the point. By 12:57, an overpowered passenger train was powered by a P32 ACDM and a heritage paint scheme that runs off the third rail going into New York City. Trailing was a P42 straight diesel. More than enough power for that short consist. Years ago, this used to be quite a passenger railroad, say back in the 1950s, for example. It was a 4-track main line. You had a few passenger trains in daylight hours, some local trains, some trains like the Empire State Express, which were primarily daylight trains. But at night, this line really hummed. You had your great steel fleet. You had your streamliners like your 20th Century Limited, your Commodore Vanderbilt, your Pacemaker, and your Chicagoan trains to Chicago, the New England states from Boston to Chicago, the Ohio State Limited from New York to Cincinnati, the Southwestern Limited from New York to St. Louis, the Cleveland Limited from New York to Cleveland, the Detroiter from New York to Detroit, and the Wolverine from New York to Chicago via Detroit, to say nothing of all the freight trains they ran. And approaching westbound at 1:24 p.m. is one of the hottest westbounds on this line, Q003, runs between South Kearny and Chicago with BNSF connections. This train combines with Q019, which is a Worcester Selkirk train, and west of Selkirk, it's one huge train headed for Chicago. That train had a lot of hot containers on it. UPS, Amazon Prime, Pacer Stack Train, and a host of others. Even had a boxcar on the front. Some high priority merchandise in there, most likely UPS parcels. This train is a descendant of the old CSX train Q169 and the old Conrail train TVLA. They ran out of New Jersey, headed for Chicago with Santa Fe and BNSF connections, depending on the year. Now further west, we're just east of downtown Amsterdam at the Quist Road crossing. It's a road leading to a boat launch. We got CSX Q364 coming east, manifest freight from Avon Yard, Indianapolis to Selkirk. monster train. He had about 170 cars, not including the DPU. He's going to be stopping east of here at CP 169. He's got to wait for Amtrak 48, the Lakeshore Limited, to clear, and there's a Q157 stack train going west, and there's a Q627 Buffalo-bound manifest from Selkirk working at 169. So kind of a busy time coming up. And another train at 219, the Lakeshore Limited from Chicago to Boston and New York. Looking east from the Quist Road crossing, you can see the main tracks here. Track number 2 on the extreme right and track number 1. It's an empty space where one of the tracks used to be of this old 4-track main. And the track on the left is a controlled siding, which runs from CP 173 to the east to CP 175 to the west. CP 175 is where the old Amsterdam passenger station used to be before they closed it and they built the new one in 1970. And approaching west at 241 should be train Q157. Stack train from Greenwich Yard, Philadelphia to Buffalo, Frontier Yard. Works at Woodbourne, Pennsylvania, South Kearney, and Syracuse. This used to be a South Kearney to Global 1 train. Good-sized train. I bet he picked up those auto racks at Doremus Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. Approaching now at 253 is 627, Q627. Selkirk to Buffalo drag freight. Works at Utica, Syracuse. Lots of big trains on this line. but not this one. And these trains, all of these trains have one thing in common: ubiquitous General Electric locomotives of all kinds. Once in a while you might see a General Motors unit. Hopefully I'll see one of those ST70 AHs that are brand new, and some foreign power. Driving east on New York Route 5 east of Amsterdam, you'll notice this overpass. This is an old railroad that goes way back to 1879. This used to be the Amsterdam, Chucktanunda and Northern Railroad, which came out of the valley here by CP 173, thereabouts, and climbed up the escarpment up to the plateau north of town. Used to have switchbacks and everything. Now it's the Kellogg branch, or it used to be the Kellogg branch of Conrail and CSX. I don't think CSX uses this anymore. They used to serve a paper mill up on top of the hill. We move further east, just west of CP 173, you can see that rusty rail, what was once the old Amsterdam, Chucktanunda and Northern. You can see it's quite rusty. It probably hasn't been used in many years. Next place I'm visiting is west of downtown Amsterdam, at a place that I'm very familiar with, although it's seen great change. This is Guy Park, or at least it used to be Guy Park, but it looks like it's sort of making a comeback. This park was a beautiful place that I used to hang around railfanning trackside along the Chicago line up until 2011, when Hurricane Irene hit, and this place was flooded out like you wouldn't believe. See if I can try to put some pictures of that in here. That building over there was the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce building. Somebody actually lived in there. When Irene hit, it virtually destroyed the building, and it still hasn't been completely rebuilt some 9 years later. It's fenced off. For a number of years there was construction material in here, and the place was a mess. You really couldn't walk around here at all. Looks like the construction debris and material and equipment is gone, but it's not the place that it once was. Now the east end of the park looks a lot more orderly than it did. It actually looks more like a park now, but it's not the unobstructed railfan place that it used to be with that fence in the way. It runs all along the tracks. It's only open where the railroad crossing is. Right here you see this maple tree, and you can see the fence is separating the maple tree from the railroad tracks behind it. Going back to 1991, I spent countless summer days putting a lawn chair down here with beer, soda, snacks, sitting under that maple tree, staying out of the sun, relaxing like you wouldn't believe, and letting the railroad action come to me. It was really a great relaxing place to go to, and I drove all the way up here from Long Island umpteen times to enjoy the trackside shade. Now the fence is there and it's not the same anymore. Ravaged this area badly in 2011. When they finally rebuilt the right-of-way, they put these relay boxes up high. Didn't even know this was a street. It's called Evelyn Street. The thing that hasn't changed, it's a real constant here, is Russo's Restaurant. Great spirits and Italian food and roast beef sandwiches. Used to have a light-colored facade, but it's now fire engine red. Looks good. This thing's been around Amsterdam for about 80 years, I'm told. 6:40 p.m. we have a westbound train on track number 2. I didn't get the symbol. Somewhere on the radio chatter while driving around, I heard a BNSF unit. Train. Some of those auto-rack trains come out of East Brookfield, Massachusetts. The location is now about 25 miles west of Amsterdam. We're at Lock 14 at Palatine Bridge. This grade crossing road goes to Lock 14 here alongside the Mohawk Canal. You'll notice the crossing with lights and gates here. That wasn't always the case. For the longest time, there was no crossing lights or warning signs or anything at all here. Just a couple of crossing bucks. There have been a couple of fatalities here. So as a result of that, the lock was closed and access was no longer permitted. But they wanted to reopen the lock and have people come back to it. And CSX said to the state, hey, the property alongside the tracks is state property. If you want to have a crossing with warning lights on it, you're going to pay for it. We're not going to do it. So the state relented and decided to build these crossing gates. And the gates are going down at 5:33. Got an eastbound coming. Nice Doppler. That's train 64. That's the Maple Leaf. Normally it runs from Toronto, Canada to New York, but the border is closed, so that's coming out of Niagara Falls now. Had a nice heritage painted P32 on the point. And that was Manifest Q621. Runs between Selkirk Yard and the Canadian National at Messina, New York. Was by at 5:56. That was definitely overpowered galore. We got an eastbound CSX at 6:13 east on number 2 track. Eastbound Manifest, I couldn't quite get the symbol. They're not really talking on the radio too good out here. That last eastbound had a lot of freight cars from Western Railroads on them. That could have been Q368 out of Clearing Yard in Chicago to southbound at 6:48. And heading east is one of the hottest trains on CSX at 6:51. That was Q004, en route from Bedford Park, Illinois to South Kearney Yard in New Jersey. At his usual DPU and a very long consist. Carries a lot of Amazon Prime containers, Orange Schneider National containers, and JB Hunt containers. Schneider National is probably one of CSX's biggest, if not the biggest, customer. Another eastbound at 7:06. These eastbounds are sneaking up on you. Eastbound at 7:07. That train definitely should have come from Chicago. He had an awful lot of Union Pacific cars on him, including those Union Pacific reefers. They used to run a solid train of reefers to a plant in Rotterdam, but they're not running that train anymore. Perhaps those cars are going to be dropped off at Rotterdam for the plant. It's almost 8 o'clock in the evening, and we're heading back east towards Amsterdam. We're now in the village of Fonda, New York, the county seat of Montgomery County. We're looking east. The roar in the background you hear are racing cars at nearby Fonda Raceway. Couldn't stand the noise in Fonda from all those racing cars, so I moved further east to a much quieter location. This is the Amtrak station at Amsterdam. This station's a good couple of miles west of downtown. It was built back in 1970, back in an era when Penn Central loved to build railroad station in inconvenient locations. Schenectady is another one, if you remember the Colony Car Wash station. It was a pretty nice day today, can't complain. It's about 8:18 in the evening. We're waiting for the westbound Lakeshore Limited, train number 49, from New York, Boston to Chicago. He's running a little late tonight, almost an hour late. In the last nearly 30 years, I've spent many days and nights at this station. I remember one particular August night back in 2002. Almost felt like autumn. Got down to about 50 degrees here as I was watching the nighttime action through here under the lights. It was cold. And the placid waters of the Mohawk River are right alongside the tracks. I can remember when this area on the south side of the tracks was strewn with telephone poles and wires. They're long gone. Yep, it's a very popular place. It's still a popular Railfan location in the Capital District. We're on the outskirts of the city of Amsterdam. We're alongside Highway New York State Route 5. This town was discovered by Dutch settlers back in 1710. This town was originally known as Veter's Mills or Vetersburg. In 1803, Anglo-American settlers came to this area and they renamed it Amsterdam. You would think the Dutch would have done that. But it's grown to be a small city. It's been famous for textile mills. This is a leader in the making of rugs and carpets for many years, but that's a distant memory. On the station building, you can see where there was once a payphone. And boy, I used that payphone an awful lot years ago. Back in the Conrail era, I used to call the Conrail car tracing service. Whenever a train went by, I would get the serial number of one of the freight cars, and I would call the Conrail tracing number and punch in the serial number, and it would tell me what train that car was on. It was a good way to identify trains. Signals approaching CP 175 have lit up for an eastbound. I can hear him vaguely in the distance. Here he comes like a raging storm. This guy sounds like he's moving pretty good. Unmistakable sound of AC traction motors. Why not? All I've seen are GEs all day. Was a typhoon. That was Q020, runs between Bedford Park, Chicago and Worcester, Massachusetts. Carries double-stacked domestic containers. The clearances are raised all the way to Worcester on the Boston line. Years ago, that train was symboled Q114. Prior to that, it was Conrail TV14. And prior to that, quite a few years on the New York Central, it was Supervan 14. That train ran from Chicago to Boston in 22 hours and 45 minutes. Blazing speed. This train is much slower than that. And today is a cloudy, but should be a rain-free July 16th, 2020. We're in the historic town of Fonda, New York, about 12 miles west of Amsterdam. And it definitely looks historic. This town has been around since 1751. This is in the heart of the Mohawk Nation, and previous names of this area I can't even pronounce. The town got its name from a Dutch-American settler named Du Fonda, who was scalped by the Mohawk tribe in the Revolutionary War. Fonda's a great place to watch trains in the Mohawk Valley. We're looking west from the Broadway crossing, and the two tracks on the left are main number 2 and main 1, left to right. Track on the right is a controlled siding, which runs from CP 184 to the east to CP 188 to the west. You can see the empty space in between that. That was where the 4th track used to be, and this once 4th track. It's the seat of Montgomery County in New York, and there's a substantial courthouse structure located here, and a nice little park on the south side of the tracks. Good place to stay cool on a hot summer day, but I don't think it'll be terribly hot today. And this is the impressive Montgomery County courthouse structure, right alongside the tracks on the south side. Something I didn't know about this courthouse building. This sign wasn't here when my last visit occurred 3 years ago. I'll have a signal. That's the approach to CP 184 to the east end of town. Their approach lit, which gives you a clue of any impending eastbounds. Yesterday was, was busy at times, quiet at times. All General Electric power, which is quite typical on this line. No foreign power of any kind. Hoping for some better luck today in that department. Today you'll also be blessed with the eastbound UPS train, which runs Thursdays only, Q002. Passes through here around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Runs from Chicago to Little Ferry, New Jersey in about a 21.5-hour schedule. That's a real hotshot. Well, 11:36 a.m. I've been here 2 hours plus. This is the first train I've seen. Westbound. I'd say he's doing track speed through here of 60. That might be Q205. That's an auto-rack train out of East Brookfield, Massachusetts. The usual GE power on the point.
3876738, date 071620. Location is QC 193.5, employee J.J. Roberts. Circle line 1A, operate on number 2 track, both directions. Between the westward absolute signal, CP 196, number 2 track, and the eastward absolute signal, CP 188, number 2 track.
Here comes Amtrak 284 en route from Niagara Falls, New York to New York City. He's on number 2 track. He'll be switching over at the next interlocking. That guy was doing every bit of 70 plus miles an hour through here. At the signal east of town, he got a limited clear indication. He'll be switching over to track number 1 at CP 184, and he'll be making his Amsterdam stop in about 10 minutes. Just prior to that, you heard the NC dispatcher giving maintenance away vehicle track time west of here between milepost 193 and milepost CP 188.